at the risk of running the Pixel Fold into the ground well before it has even been announced. We're going to be talking about it again here today because what we have is a post from a website called howtoisolve.com, which is a website I have never heard of, but apparently they are working in conjunction with @OnLeaks. This is a pretty major, reputable leaker on the internet in terms of phones, and they have posted the following, which confirms the reports from John Prosser, Front Page Tech, about the design of the upcoming Google Pixel Fold, which is, of course, their foray into the world of folding devices. As you can see here, this looks just like what John Prosser had reported this thing would look like, and I think it looks absolutely phenomenal. So in this video, we're going to look at this for a moment. You know, most of this is not new information at all, but there is some new information here, which is the actual dimensions of the device. And using these dimensions, we are going to compare it to a couple of other devices like the Z Fold 4 and Surface Duo 2 so that we can kind of visualize how this thing is going to fit into our hands and how it's going to work and why I am very, very excited about this device. If you want to see more granular detail where we talk about potential release dates, what the cameras might be based on all the information out there, there'll be a link to that in the description of this video. We're mostly just going to be concerned about what it looks like and, again, how it visually, physically compares to some other devices. But let's scroll down here and let's look at some of the images that they have here. So this is one that I think personally, that zoomed in way too far, I think this thing looks really, really good. You can see that that cover display is a little bit wider, a little bit shorter than the Z Fold 4. If we scroll down even further, I think this really does a good job of showing what this thing really looks like. I personally think that this cover display looks great. I wish that this region here was a little bit thinner, but I'm not going to really complain about it. It's the dimensions that honestly I've always wanted. And this one here, I mean, look, what device does this kind of put you in the mind of? Am I crazy, or does this really look like a Surface Duo 2 without the hinge down the middle? It really, really does. I mean, let's go back and look at what this cover display looks like. You can see it there. Again, what does this kind of put you in the mind of? It's not as wide as this, but it's in the ballpark for sure. Look at that thing. I think it looks really, really good. It's very thin. I love how much shorter and wider it is than the Z Fold 4, but I think now it's time to jump into the thing that I said I was going to do. We're going to, like I said, compare the physical size of these devices so that we're not just imagining what these things are going to look like next to each other. I'm going to put them next to each other so that we can just see it. This is a website called Compare Sizes, and I've punched in the dimensions of the Duo 2, Pixel Fold, Z Fold 4, and Oppo Find N. And what you see here is exactly that. Actually, let's make this bigger because it just needs to be bigger. So as you can see here, the Surface Duo 2 in the back is definitely the biggest device in terms of the width, but you can see that the Pixel Fold is sort of right there with it. Then you can see the Z Fold 4 poking way out of the top there because it is, in my opinion, built the wrong way around. It's too tall. It needs to be flipped around and to be turned horizontally. And then the Oppo Find N directly in front. If we go this way, you can see the thickness of these devices. And you can see that the Pixel Fold is only slightly thicker than the Surface Duo 2. Look at that. 0.2 millimeters thicker than Duo 2, and it is much thinner than the Z Fold 4 and much thinner than the Oppo Find N. So I would imagine most people watching this video probably don't have an Oppo Find N, but I thought it was worth including here simply because it is really the only device that has that shorter, wider thing going on. So I wanted to include it here, but you can see that the Pixel Fold is definitely going to be a bit wider and a bit taller than the Find N. We're comparing the yellow to the green, but keep in mind that the Pixel Fold does have more of a bezel than the Oppo Find N does. So the actual screen size is probably going to be relatively similar, just a little bit wider, which I think is actually a good thing. So we're going to lose some screen vertically because of that bezel, but then we're going to gain some screen horizontally because of the width. Let's get rid of the Oppo Find N so that you can kind of see this more directly with the Z Fold 4. You can see that the Z Fold 4 is sticking out way out of the top. But if we do this, let's take the dimensions here of the Z Fold 4. Let's go back to add item. Let's put in those dimensions. Let's go Z Fold 4 and let's get rid of the automatic flipping, and we can delete that and then add it back in. But this time we're going to flip the height and the width. So that basically what we've done is we've taken our Z Fold 4 and we've rotated it 90 degrees to be in what you would consider like landscape mode. And now you have something very, very interesting. So again, consider the fact that the Pixel Fold has a bezel that size and that size, right? Now let's go back. And now look at the height difference, because the width difference is almost non-existent, right? We're talking about 3.5 millimeters wider for the Pixel Fold, but we are talking about 9.5 millimeters taller. Well, about how thick are those bezels? Do you reckon if you halved that, what did I say, 9.5 millimeter difference? So let's say about 4.5, 5 millimeters on either side. Do you think that bezel is about 5 millimeters? I'd say that's probably pretty accurate. So in that regard, if you want to know what love is, no, if you want to know what the Pixel Fold is going to look like, what that screen size is going to be, this is what you do. You take a Z Fold 4 and you turn it that way, and then you imagine a little bit of a bezel up here and a little bit of a bezel down there. And I just launched my camera. And that's pretty much the Pixel Fold's screen. Now, if you want to imagine what the external screen is going to look like, look at the back of your Z Fold 4 and sort of cut it in half. And that's going to be about what that screen is going to be like. Cut it in half. And then, of course, you have to account for the little bit of hinge here on the side. But that's going to be pretty close to what this thing is going to look like. You'd also want to add a little bit of height as well, because as we've seen in that image, there is a slight height difference there as well that you have to keep in mind, because while we can account for that height difference on the tablet screen by simply looking at the bezel on the tablet screen, right? The cover display doesn't really have that bezel, so you would have to account for that. All in all, though, I think that this thing is looking really good. Let's get rid of the Fold 4, and now we can see it in front of Surface Duo 2. So you can kind of imagine there, take out a Surface Duo 2. If you're on this channel, you probably have one, and then just sort of make it a little bit smaller, a little bit less wide, a little bit less tall, and that's pretty much what you're going to have. So when you look at these images and you see these dimensions, it is in a, pretty big way, a slightly scaled down, slightly thicker, like only slightly thicker though, Surface Duo 2 without the hinge, with probably a significantly better camera and an interesting software experience. And then, look, it's going to be running these newer builds of Android that do in fact have really cool things going on, like the taskbar down here, which is going to make multitasking a whole lot easier. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's going to suddenly be the greatest multitasking phone on the planet. It's not going to usurp the Surface Duo 2, and it's not going to probably usurp the Z Fold 4, because Samsung adds so much stuff on top of that native stock Android experience. But I do think it's going to be quite good at multitasking, and the fact that it is wider, each app is going to have more room to breathe without having to rotate your phone around. I think that there is going to be some really, really nice multitasking potential on this device. And then you get all the Pixel goodness. I'm rambling. I've said this stuff too many times. This is my most anticipated device in existence right now. I am super, super excited for this thing. And hopefully my little size comparison kind of gets you guys framed correctly how you should expect this thing to look and feel in the hand and how it can compare to these other devices. Guys, if you enjoy this video, hit that subscribe button before you leave. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.